Hey everyone, today we're going to jump into a question that it really cuts right to the heart of modern faith. With all the different denominations out there, does it start to feel like we're all just kinda Christian? We're diving into a text that argues the very labels we use might be watering down the whole point. So let's get right into it. So, right off the bat, the source throws this massive question at us. You look at the landscape of Christianity today, and you see literally thousands of different denominations. The author makes us stop and ask, wait a minute, how can a faith that's all about unity be so incredibly divided? And what does it even mean to follow Christ when there are so many different versions of what that looks like? And that really sets the stage for our first section here. This source doesn't see this as just healthy diversity. It frames it as a genuine challenge, a real problem. We're going to explore how all these microdivisions create a pretty complicated and maybe even contradictory reality for the faith itself. Okay, so here's the heart of the critique. The author isn't just saying these divisions are a bit unfortunate. No, they're arguing that the very existence of all these different kinds of Christians goes against the core message of unity that's supposed to be at the center of it all. It's a really bold claim that kind of challenges the whole way we think about modern Christianity. So let's dig a little deeper into this. This next section really gets into why the author sees this system of denominations as such a deep, fundamental problem. We're not just talking about disagreements over small things. It's about something much, much bigger. And this quote, wow, it just gets right to the emotional core of it, doesn't it? It's this powerful question that really makes you think, can a system built on all these different labels and divisions actually produce love and unity? The author is basically suggesting that these man-made lines in the sand aren't just harmless. They actively work against what the church is supposed to be. This slide does a great job of showing the two paths the author lays out. On one side, you've got followers of Christ, people whose identity is built on these shared core truths. But on the other side, you have followers of man, where identity gets all tangled up in man-made labels and focusing on what makes us different. The author's point? You can't really be on both paths at the same time. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what about all those movements that try to bring all the churches together? Well, the author sees that coming and tackles it head on. This section gets into a critique of what they see as a totally flawed and maybe even deceptive solution. First, let's just be clear on the term. The source defines ecumenism as this idea that all these different man-made paths will eventually get you to God, and that we should just unify by kind of overlooking all the things we disagree on. I mean, it sounds pretty good on the surface, right? But the author has a very, very different perspective. And yeah, that perspective is incredibly blunt. The author doesn't see ecumenism as a path to real unity at all. They see it as a deception, something that twists the truth. The argument is that this approach doesn't actually solve the problem of division, it just papers over it, creating this false sense of harmony, while the real problems are left to fester. Okay, so if denominations are the problem and this idea of ecumenism isn't the solution, then what is? Well, let's dive into the path forward that the source actually lays out. It's all about making this radical shift away from complicated church structures and getting back to some really basic principles. So the author gives us these 4 steps. And notice it all starts on the inside, softening our hearts, renewing our minds. Then it moves to an action. You have to consciously stop following man-made systems. And finally, you pivot to a new focus. You start following Christ by zeroing in on what the source says is the absolute core of his teaching. And this right here, this is the whole thing. The author says Christ already gave us the answer. It's not about building a new, better system. It's about returning to these 2 incredibly simple but powerful commands. This is where that life of service truly begins. Not by joining the right group, but by actively loving God and being there for one another. So how do you actually walk this path? Well, the source says it takes a few essential things. It's not about just blindly accepting stuff. It's about using your brain, critical thinking, logic, all fueled by a genuine love for what is true. And what's the foundation for all of it? The author makes it crystal clear: humility. Without that, none of the other stuff is even possible. All right, let's get to our last section, because this adds a really crucial final piece to the whole argument. The author makes it so clear that finding this path isn't like crossing a finish line. It's actually about starting a completely different kind of race. The argument here is that real faith is alive. It's dynamic. It's not some static belief system that you download once and you're done. No, it's this
living, breathing process of constant movement, of facing challenges, and of having these aha moments, new realizations. It's a state of continuous transformation.
And this slide just lays out the two mindsets perfectly. You've got the people who are deceived by all the division, who think they've already arrived, but then you have the true followers who understand that finding the path is just the starting line. It brings to mind a really powerful idea. We can try to be righteous without being a servant, but we can't live a life of servitude without being righteous. This is what Christ meant when he said to pick up the cross and to follow him. This final quote just brings it all home. The focus shouldn't be on getting to some endpoint. The journey itself, the process of growing, of learning, of serving others, that is the point. It's about living out that life of service, not just checking off a list of beliefs. And so we're left with this question. The Source is pushing us to look past all the labels and all the structures, and instead to just focus on the journey. If faith really is this journey of servitude, of loving God and our neighbor, then what does that road actually look like for each one of us, day in and day out? That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us.